Hello, and welcome to this first topic video on the channel. I am Neurotransmission, and in this video, I would like to give you a very simple overview of neurotransmission, which is how neurons and receptors talk to each other and how they can talk to like your skeletal muscles. Now, we are going to do this at what most people probably think of when they talk about neuroscience and the brain, which is the chemical synapse. Now, a synapse is the communication connection between like two neurons or a receptor like the touch receptors in your skin and a neuron, or like the neuron and your biceps that tells your bicep to contract or relax, things like that. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this little schematic of a neuron. And this neuron is composed of three areas. The first area is called the receptive area. And it's called that because, generally, simplistically speaking, this is where signals from receptors and other neurons reach out to on a target neuron. Oh, also, neuron is just a type of nervous system cell. So, anyway, we have our receptive area, and it is composed of the dendrites here in green and the cell body, or you may sometimes hear people call it the soma, and I may use soma on occasion in these videos. Now, besides the receptive area, we have a conductive area composed of the axon. And as we see later in the video, its whole purpose is to take electrical signals from the receptive area down to the very tips at the other end. And those tips at the other end is the transmission area. And it's composed of the axon terminal, or realistically, terminals, because there's a lot of them. Now, we're going to begin looking at neurotransmission by zooming in on this little area, on this little dendrite. And if we zoom in, we will see that there is a protein that goes through the membrane of the cell. And this protein is called a receptor. And its whole job is to detect signals that are trying to be sent to the neuron from other neurons or receptors. And outside of the dendrite, in the fluid surrounding the neuron, which is called the cerebrospinal fluid, because it's fluid in your brain, or also known as the cerebrum, and your spinal cord. And ions are these positive or negatively charged molecules made from the elements like sodium and chloride and potassium and calcium. Now, that little chemical signal that the receptor detects is also called a ligand. But I will try to use just the chemical signal name for now. But I wanted you to know the word ligand, or some people pronounce it ligand, just in case you ever hear it in conversation or you read about it. Now, what happens is when that chemical signal touches and binds to the receptor, it causes that whole protein to change its shape. And it will create a pathway through the cell membrane, like so, and it will allow those ions to flow from the outside of the neuron to the inside of the neuron. And that's going to cause other proteins who detect this incoming change in ions to open up and allow more ions to flow in. And that's going to look like an electrical signal that flows down the dendrites into the cell body and around the edge of the cell body and into the axon. And it's going to go down the axon and into the axon terminal, where it will signal the release of other chemical signals into the next communication area, also called the synapse, and it will talk to the next neuron in line, or maybe even a muscle cell, or it may even talk to the touch receptors in your body, things like that. Well, this was my short little video on neurotransmission. In later videos, I will go a little more in depth of how all of this works, but this is what people mean when they talk about things like dopamine being released in your brain and other neurons or brain cells seeing the dopamine, things like that. So, talk to you later and see you in the next video. Bye bye.